Linda Cooper, and thank you so much for tuning in to a brand new episode of the New 100 Longevity Campaign. Today's show, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. You're going to be thinking this is really out there. And I'm featuring a subject matter that has been widely ignored by the mainstream and poo-pooed by the mainstream media. And you're probably going to think this is so random because the topic that I'm talking about is crop circles. And you're thinking, okay, what does this have to do with longevity and healing? All right, so I'm going to go there. This has been scientifically proven, and today's guest is going to break it down for us, how crop circles geomagnetic energy has an incredible healing modality. And there's a lot of scientific data to back this up. And he has created an incredible remote option for people that you don't have to go to a crop circle to receive the healing benefits through his crop circle resonance cards. And I need you all to just keep an open mind, because this is all going to be broken down for you, and it's very scientific. Our guest today is Freddy Silva, and he's a best-selling author. He's a leading researcher of ancient civilizations. He's written 7 books on the subject matter, including on crop circles, called Secrets in the Field. And he has been doing decades of research and work in this subject matter. And I can't wait for you all to hear what he has to say. So let's get started, and welcome Freddy to the show. Hey Freddy, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really wanting to dive deep on crop circles because the whole thing that you're doing with your crop circle resonance cards really spoke to me. And I actually can share with you that this card in particular, I do kinesiology, and this was the only one of all of the 49 in the deck that spoke to me. And I feel definitely that I'm getting this benefit that I can't even put into words. So I want you to go ahead and let's just start at some place in the beginning. Let's talk about the science that you've discovered with, having the crop circles being living organisms, and how this resonance came to be, that you figured this out.
Yeah. Going back about 25 years now, 30 years. God, I feel old now. We were looking at these very strange symbols in the field in England and pretty much throughout the rest of the world. And we were having personal experiences. And you often think, well, sometimes when you want something to happen really badly, you will experience something. But when we started collecting stories from people who were really skeptical about crop circles, that's when the other shoe fell, because this shouldn't be happening to people that don't believe in this stuff. And we were collecting hundreds and hundreds of stories, and things like helicopter pilots who would fly over the crop circles at certain times of the day, and specifically 2 times of the day, and all the equipment went haywire. They refused to fly over the airspace of these things. There was something that was interacting electromagnetically. Well, we're electromagnetic beings. So it just went from one piece of logic to the next to figure out there must be some kind of energy. We're looking at a symbol on the ground, but what we're looking at is a kind of a slice of the orange. You sort of cut an orange in half. We get to see the flat of the orange, but there's a bit above and a bit below. Yeah. So we began to treat these things as living organisms, and we borrowed a lot of expensive equipment. We go around measuring them, and yes, there was a different energy field when you compared what was happening outside the crop circle and inside. And sometimes the energy would be doubled compared to what was going on outside. So that doesn't happen in nature. There were geomagnetic anomalies. The plants were doing strange things. And if you leave them alone, and this is a good way to differentiate the man-made rubbish from the real stuff. The man-made stuff is crushed to the ground, and that's it, it's dead. But the real ones, if you leave them alone, you leave the plants alone, they go back up towards the sunlight in a few days. And, wow. And the ones that people have not walked in at all, which is very rare nowadays. Back in the 1800s, in 1985, you'd see this brand new circle that no one had been in it for a week, and you could tell that the plants had been flattened, but then they began to rise up in the most strange fashion. I mean, some of them, if you don't know plant physiology, they're like your fingers. They have little joints, and some of the plants would go back up on their first joint, the next group of plants would go up on the second joint, and so forth. So when you're on the ground, you'd see this undulating effect. Now, again, that's something that doesn't happen in nature, and that's why we began to treat these things not just as symbols, but as living organisms which are interacting with people and causing the most strange of effects.
Yes, yes. And people have come out of the crop circles saying that they have felt this incredible, they've had a life-changing experience.
Yeah.
And I mean, I actually saw a video. It wasn't one of yours. It was this.
Oh, we can't be friends then.
I watched a lot of yours too, but I wanted to really, really,
Yes.
like, really research this. And one of them were these people. They were in the fields, and they got these white raised veins, like almost like the protein of their hands, like raised up, and it was like really crazy. And they said, look, it's happening, and then it subsides when they leave this certain area of the
Yeah.
field, and then they go back in, and then it raises again. It's like, oh my gosh, what's that?
Oh yeah, and then they carry a bit of the electrical current from the circles, and I've had there's been some very funny stories, expensive stories where people go back to the hotel and everything that they touched is electrical, including the light switches. Everything blows up, and there was a local manager who runs a hotel in the center of England, and he was going nuts because like these bloody Americans, wherever they go, they're always causing trouble. So what's happening? Well, they're short circuiting everything. There must be the hair dryers. So, yeah, but they can't short circuit the hair dryers because the hair dryers from America are running on 110 volts and we run on 240 volts in England. So actually, you blow up their equipment, not the other way around. So it must be something else. Well, it turns out they all were carrying residual energy from the crop circles, and they found that this continued when they got back home to America. And they gathered around the water table, sorry, the water machine at work, and they said that any computer that they touched blew up. And it was all because they were actually eating. They took the seeds from the crop circle and they were still eating them in America. And so they asked us to send them some more. And I said, all right, well, we'll send you some more seeds. And they did the same thing. And then the third time, we sent them another box of seeds. These people must have been rich, obviously. They kept blowing things up. And they said, well, nothing happened this time. I said, well, no, we wouldn't expected it to happen. Well, why? Well, because we sent you fake seeds, just normal seeds.
Oh,
Just
placebo seeds.
yeah, just to test the theory that something really was happening. It was like whether it was a placebo effect or whether it was genuine, because you have to play devil's advocate and
Right.
figure out if this being made up or is it real. So another real experience right there. And as the BBC also found out, when you take expensive cameras and cross the perimeter into a real crop circle when it's active, it will blow up a $20,000 camera. They learned that the hard way. They did it twice, despite our warning. So there you go.
Yes, yes. You're a professional photographer as well, and you've lost several Nikons that way.
It's been expensive.
The seeds themselves, though, what was it? They were enhanced 2 to 1 with having the crop circle geomagnetic energy. Is that something that you found? I remember reading something about that.
Well, the seeds by themselves, plants are electromagnetic, and they're also geotropic. So they follow the source of gravity, so that the roots go into the ground. So the first thing that we found out is that in the real crop circles, the roots are pointing in the wrong direction. Now that doesn't happen naturally unless you manipulated the gravitational field. And if you do that, you also bend time. And there's no end of stories of people who had missing time in crop circles. And even your watches are slightly different when you've been there for like an hour or two. So we were noting these things, but the biggest effect of electromagnetism is on seed reproduction. So if we would take a seed and plant it in a laboratory and just watch it grow after, say, 7 days, it would be about this big. So we then take the seed from something that we definitely knew, 99.99%, it was a real crop circle. And within the same time, it was up to here. It had doubled the rate of growth.
Wow.
And the hoax seed, which were placed next door, would be the same height as a normal seed. So we did all these experiments. We found out that the germination tests were proving that there's been an accelerated growth. And so something has interacted with the actual physiognomy of the plant itself. And also, we began to bury water bottles or vials of water inside the crop circles and also outside to measure if there was a recurring energy pattern that would imprint itself on water. So we sent the bottles to Jacques Benveniste in France. He was the man who, in the latter years, discovered or reproved that homeopathy works. And he was validated by 5 different universities in Europe. So we sent him the vials labeled 1, 2, 3, and 4 because he couldn't know where they came from. It's a blind experiment. And it turns out that the vials of water that came from within the real crop circles have been potentized 138% above normal. So the energy was imprinting itself, leaving a fingerprint in the water itself. And the one thing that links crop circles in south of Britain and also in the prairie of North America, which is the same geology, where we also get the next biggest group of crop circles, the crop circles are looking for the water. So the energy is going into the watershed and it's actually imprinting the water, goes all around the planet. Now that's the consequences are extraordinary when you think
Okay,
about it from
so
that point of
that's
view.
incredible. So you're saying that it's imprinting all of the water around the planet?
And we're drinking it. Yep.
Well, thank the Lord. Something
Yeah, it's
good.
very subtle. It's a very subtle way of actually imprinting something. And then it's the information is in the water itself. So we drink the water and we're 2/3 water too. So you're drinking the water that's imprinted with information. Now, it's not going to do anything. It's setting up a potential. And this is the most important thing because people say, oh, they're coming to save us. Well, that's never going to happen. Okay. We're the ones we've been waiting for, as the Hopi say. To be born on this planet and have someone else fix our problems defeats the purpose of incarnation. So they're putting a potential, an idea into the water, and we drink it. And then it's up to us to decide, do we want to continue with our paradigm that we have right now? Or am I ready for a change? Do I want something different that may be an improvement on what we have right now? And this, 30 years later, is why we have this dichotomy right now, especially politically around the world. People are fighting because the old paradigm is disintegrating and new people are saying, no, I've woken up to something much better. We can do better than this. And of course, it's triggering a polar effect. It's creating a knee-jerk reaction. And that is essentially one of the things that's going on as part of the big change. And it's really up to us to eventually implement the change.
And I feel that that change is the collective consciousness of the planet right now. I feel has awoken. I really do feel that it's like been this culmination these past 10 years, but right now I do feel that it's coming to a head.
Yeah, it's happened before. We've been here before, but we keep forgetting that we've been here before. We keep whining about how terrible the world is. The world is just fine. It's society that's the
It's
problem.
us that needs to
We
get
keep
fixed.
getting
We need
sidetracked
to
with
get
things which
fixed.
actually have no relationship to reality
Yeah.
and making mountains out of molehills.
I think that there's so much to be said for what you have discovered, and I want to dive into the actual sound frequency of the crop circles because I know that sound frequency, and I'm featuring this on the show in different healing modalities as well, but in this one particular instance, there's I believe the sound frequency is, let me just see in my notes, 260 to
The
320
320.
hertz.
Yeah.
So 260 to 320 hertz is what we as humans don't have in our
Yeah.
repertoire, but the crop circles do. It's like the
And
missing
it's
piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I mean, we're a whole ball of radio stations inside this physical body, but nothing happens between 260 and 320 hertz. It's like there's radio silence inside the human body, and we kept monitoring the frequencies inside the crop circles, and they seem to be gathering at 250 to 320 megahertz. So it's 10 times more than the frequency that's missing in the human body. So it was just simple. Why are people having strange experiences and awakenings in crop circles? And we figured it's something to do with the frequencies that we've actually found, because not only are they putting in the frequencies that we're missing in the spectrum, but they're amplifying them 10 times. Now that's quite extraordinary when you think about that. And our cells, again, they're bypassing the communication process They're not going through here. They're talking right down to the cellular structure of the human body.
Cellular
And of
level.
course, we're reacting to it.
Yeah.
So from there, it was open season on research on these living organisms.
So tell me about your crop circle resonance cards. Does it have the sound frequency in this? How does this work?
I have to be careful because I've been sworn to secrecy about this. So I'll give you,
Give me
I'll allude to something. I'll
Give
allude to
me
something.
the Cliff Notes version where you're not giving away too much, but I have to explain the concept behind what this is. And I'm sure that this is so unusual. I mean, when I heard about this, I was like, this is phenomenal because it's a way
Yeah, it is.
to take advantage of the remote healing. You don't have to be, I mean, most of the crop circles are located in England during a certain time of year. So who can get to a crop circle? So this, you've provided a way to remotely heal through the crop circle resonance. So how does it work?
And that was the whole point of the reasoning behind it. Essentially, we were trying to figure out how do you take the resonance of what's in the field and then transfer it. Now, at this same time, I was working with a group in Germany called the Institute of Resonance Therapy. Essentially, it's radionics for any other name. And they'd been doing similar work, but they were using it in a different way. So they had this big machine and they were looking at ways of transposing information from their laboratory to a person or a tree that was dying or a river that was polluted somewhere else in Europe. How can you heal at a distance? And of course, radionics has a wonderful track record of doing this. So they had this big machine and they found that if you take these old symbols from ancient cultures, such as the most original languages on the planet, which is ancient Hebrew, Javanese, and I think they use runes as well. But basically, the symbols that were drawn up, and specifically Sanskrit, the symbols that were drawn up in the ancient era contain a form of energy within the symbol. And in the Hindu philosophy, it says these are the expressions of the words of a creative God. So you are not allowed to change the phrasings of the writing because you change the energy. So they thought, what if? So they put the symbol on the machine after figuring out which symbol tallies with the disease that the person is going through, and they found the match, and then they would transmit the information from the symbol to the person. And they measured the results, and it was incredible. I mean, it was like magic.
Wow.
So they made notes of this, and then they began to use sacred geometry that's used in temples throughout the world. Same thing was happening. Well, one thing led to the other. We discovered geometry hidden within the circles. So when we see a crop circle, that's not what you're getting. There's an internal mechanism going on. Once we figured this out, they figured, well, let's try putting the photographs of the crop circles into the machine, and bingo, they had exactly the same effect. Now, there's a problem here because it concerns politics. The photographs have a high history of politics and people who are, let's say, nefarious when it comes to using them. And there's also a lot of fakery going on. And of course, you don't get energy from fakes. So what was the next thing? Well, as a former graphic artist, I already had designed all the crop circles based on the surveys that I'd measured, and along with those of my friends. So I had the entire collection at my disposal. I thought, well, I've got the symbol. Now what we have to do is transport the energy from the crop circle to the symbol and maintain it in the symbol. That's what I can't talk about. I am sworn
Okay.
to secrecy about this for good reasons. Nothing nefarious. It's for a very good reason. It's to protect the integrity of the method. But yes, we found a way to actually concentrate the original onto the card and then let it go. And this is the hard part because I spent 3 years monitoring which people were selecting which design to go with which illness.
Oh,
And
that's
it
so
wasn't making
interesting.
any
So wait a
sense.
minute. So what does this one say about me?
Well, it doesn't. That's the whole point. You see, that's the whole point. I do
Okay.
know several cameras broken there, though. That was a particularly nasty one for electrical equipment.
Oh, I better
Um,
keep it away from the
But
computer.
you see, I had 28 pages of information when we first released this. And by the way, I've never advertised this. I've never advertised the cards
I
ever.
saw
I
this
let,
on one of the
yeah,
shows and it came up as just a subtopic. It was like a sentence or two, and I was like, what? Back up. I need
yeah,
to
Regina,
contact him.
yeah. I can't believe she actually went there. I thought, oh, don't go there.
I want to go there because the mainstream has, and that's the other thing too. It's like this subject matter has been dismissed or poo-pooed as a hoax, or the media has tried to diminish the importance. And I can't understand at this level, decades later, with all of the research and scientific data backing it, how
Oh,
this has still been.
it's people at a very high level within military and so forth. It wasn't the media. The media just had their allies and they fed the information. But there's a specific group of very nefarious people around the world who are intent on making sure this stuff doesn't come out, because there are good things that can come out of it for people. We can't have that.
Yeah, well, I'm
No,
featuring all of that, and so they really hate me.
exactly. But I never actively advertised this because I wanted to keep it under the radar, and I wanted people to be drawn by their own passion to these things. And some of the feedback I get is beyond imagination. But we finally came to the conclusion that these are energy forms, and you're an energy form. And healing is a kind of a disconnect between you and your local environment, and you have to find your energy form to make a connection with another energy form. The two have to have a private conversation. That's how these things work. There is no rational aspect to it. There's no logical aspect, because that's short circuits the whole thing. So when people ask me, when was it made? What does it mean? No, you don't want to know any of that, because you'll start putting up barriers of
Right.
perception between you and the symbol. And I have endless of cases where the healing was working, and then they literally got into the logical part and they short circuited the process and it stopped working.
I
So
want to
that's
hear
what.
some stories about the healing, the energy.
Oh, there's hundreds and hundreds, and they blow my mind each time, because, like I said, I only provide a small piece of information as to how to use them, and let people do whatever they will, and they will experiment. And my God, I had no idea. For example, when I think I just come off 14 airplanes, and I booked my massage therapist for a couple of hours, and I paid a third hour just to leave me alone. My body was really shot, and she's very good. And she had been experimenting with these things, but I don't know how. But all I know is that for an hour and a half, 2 hours, I was lying on a table, and she was just breaking into me with her hands. And I kept seeing this image in my forehead of this particular design, which I know very well. And it's a particularly active design where it's used to really boost the system in distress, which is essentially what disease is, to boost the system in distress, because it's so depleted of energy. It's like a massive shock, like you're putting your fingers into the electricity circuit. And everybody that took anything electrical into that design, it blew up everything. I mean, it was off the scale.
Wow.
But I kept seeing this thing. I thought, why am I seeing this thing? And I think maybe I just need it right now when I'm being massaged. Well, afterwards, she says, well, how was it today? I said, well, actually, even better than usual. And she says, well, how? I said, well, give me a piece of paper and a pen, I'll show you. And I drew the symbol. I said, for the last 2 hours, I've been watching this in my forehead as though I'm supposed to be meditating on this. And she goes, well, you remember those cards? I said, yeah. Well, I decided to tune into my patient before they arrive. I become the conduit. Okay, so it's not about her. She's just
Right.
a vessel. She's tuning into what the person needs for their highest potential, to give them the highest connection to their environment. And I would tune in to you and you go, wow. And I picked this one. And right there in the corner of the room, it's tuning up the energy of the room so that you're walking into the energy of the crop circle before I'd even massaged you. And it was behind me. I'd never seen it. So
Wow.
that's just one example of what goes on. And I said, that never would have even crossed my mind that that was possible. So
I
it
love
blows
that.
my mind when I get feedback from people around the world as well.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Well, have you ever seen, I guess, stories of cancer? Have you heard of any of those types of stories? Like to be able to
Yeah, and it
remove
was
tumors?
quite a depressing one actually in the end, which taught us something very big. And it was a neighbor of mine just before I moved to Maine. The only person that I knew, she calls me up one day. She's just here on the coast, and she said that her neighbor was sent home from Maine Medical Hospital, where I ended up living next to, by the way, from London. And she said she's been sent home to die. She's got terminal bone cancer. She's got 3 days left to live. So they sent her home to die with dignity. And she says, "What? I heard the crop circles can heal. What can I do?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to stop you right there. The crop circles don't heal anything. They are a potential. They're a source of energy, and they're looking for a like organism with which to interact. And then you let the pieces fall where they may." no judgment, no outcome. You let the two organisms talk it out between themselves. And she says, okay, well, what do I do? I said, well, you take the card and you just kind of move it to, actually, she hadn't got the cards yet. She had the book that I wrote. And I said, well, take a picture. The pictures have not been altered in the book. And if you move them around the table and ask the picture to show you a critical rotation point, don't question that, just say that and watch what happens to your body. So she moves the book on the table and she gets like a kick in her belly. I said, that's exactly what happens, because the crop circle, the energy is in the picture, and the picture is now linked to the energy field where you are right now. Okay, it's linked to the magnetic field. The picture is now active. Take a glass of water, make sure it's dry at the bottom, put it on top of the card, and you are going to assist the energy going from the picture into the water, and imagine it, and don't put any outcome. Your patient has to pick the picture because she knows what's in her interest. She calls me up 48 hours later when this woman is almost dead and buried. She says, she's actually recovering and it freaked her out because she picked this picture and she says, well, I feel like I know this picture quite well. So I figured, okay, the two have recognized each other. A month later, this woman drives herself back to the hospital for a diagnosis. She should have been dead 4 weeks earlier.
Wow.
But that's a great part one of the story. The second part is not so good. 3 months later, she actually died. And I had tea with my friend and I said, well, what happened? And she said, well, she was a fundamentalist Christian, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but her belief system, kicked in. She said,
Yeah.
my God, I should be dead. I looked at the picture of a crop circle. I took 4 drops 4 times a day, and I was cured of my illness. I was actually recovering. It must be witchcraft or devil worship, because this is not featured in the Bible.
Yeah.
And this is a true story. So she short circuits the belief between her and the organism. And guess what happens? She starts degrading, she starts going backwards, and then boom, she's dead.
Yeah.
And as I was taught early on in my teachings, sometimes death is a form of healing. Because sometimes the organism has to go through either a disease to learn how to cope with that, because we don't know what the individual wants. And
Right.
sometimes death is also a form of healing when someone really can't cope here. So you've got to look at death in a completely different way. And it was a huge learning curve for all of us.
Wow. Wow. Well, I think you just have to be open your mind up to allowing this energy to do its work and to not get in your own way.
Exactly. And that's why I keep saying to people, don't worry about the brain
Yeah.
thing, when they were built, when they were made, what happened, what did they mean?
Yeah.
We know some of that, but it gets in the way. It really short circuits that process.
Yes. Let's talk about when and where they're made and the time of day, which is usually between 2 and 4 in the morning. Although sometimes it's 2 and 4 in the afternoon, but majority, I mean, it's just like a really strange. I want to know why it's during those hours, and then also the majority of crop circles are found in England, and there's chalk there. So, what is the relevance of that?
Chalk is a water-bearing rock, and it's also the world's deepest chalk aquifer. And the next collection of crop circles appear in the Canadian Prairie, which is a limestone aquifer, the biggest one in the world. So they're looking for the water. They're trying to code the water. The crop circles and water have to be together. There has to be near a river or a meadow. There has to be water nearby. And I've got lots of infrared photographs showing how a brand new crop circle has completely displaced the water in the center of the design, and the rest of the field is fine. So that's the first thing. The other thing is that they're using the Earth's geomagnetic field in order to imprint the information. Now, between 2 and 3 in the morning, think about what happens to you where you live. You left the body, you're on REM sleep, okay? You're dancing with fairies, going out to the ball, mixing it up with people that you've never met, but the situation is totally real in your mind, because it is, because you have actually physically left the body and you're in the other world. That's the only way we can explain it. So what happens at the Earth at 2 and 3 in the morning where you live is that the geomagnetic field is now weakened a little bit because the sun is exactly on the opposite side of the Earth.
Okay.
So there's a weakness in the field, and that allows for a kind of a window of opportunity for your soul to go AWOL and travel astrally. And then you wake up because, 4 in the morning, you go, oh, and now I need to go to the bathroom. Yeah, you suddenly jump back into the physical world because that window is closing
I
again.
actually wake up during that time between, usually it's right around 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, every morning. It just like
Yeah, it's
happens.
people who are much more sensitive even pick it
I'm
up even
very
more.
sensitive.
It's
And
like, I
so
don't want to go there today. I want to stay here on Earth a little bit.
we won't go there. That's like
Yeah.
going to be too woo-woo for a lot of people. So
Exactly. But I mean, this by the same token, you're also allowing a window where information comes into the earth, you see. And
right.
that's why the crop circles, I'd say 95% appear between 2 and 3 in the morning, which is kind of annoying when you're out in the middle of the night, sitting on a mound, waiting to see something happen and filming. And we've done that a lot. And yeah, a lot of scotch is drunk in the middle of the night just to keep out the damp. And and then it'll happen behind you anyway, just to make fun of you. It
Yes.
was great. It was a great interaction between a consciousness that's very benevolent and that obviously has our highest interest at stake.
Yes. And you've got it scientifically on record that hundreds of crop circles have been witnessed at this point being made
Mm.
in a very short period of time, like 15, 20 seconds out of thin air. And, you know, who is, who do you feel are the circle makers? Who do you
Oh,
feel?
I know them very well.
So tell
Yeah,
us
I mean
about that.
these reports go back to the 1800s before there was electricity, so we know it wasn't satellite technology. There was postmen, there were military people, members of parliament. I mean, these are people who don't they're not into woo woo. So when they see a beam of light or a sort of a tube coming down, rotating the plants and then retracting into the clouds 15 seconds later, UFOs really don't come into the equation either. So after a lot of experiences and collective experience and also science and a lot of mysticism that went with it, we came to the conclusion that this is a conscious source because we can interact with them and they can interact with us. And we'd have these sessions where we'd actually create a crop circle according to certain mathematical protocols in the field. And we'd pay the farmer, of course. And then we get a reply 4 weeks later. It's almost like we left the holes and the design outside of the design, and the response took the thing outside the design and put it into the hole. The old classic game. And we could also get to the point where we were very good at predicting where they were going to be and what they were going to look like. So obviously we were interacting with them at this point. And no, I definitely feel that they're conscious. They're very real on their level of reality. And one of my people who was initially involved with this, who's since become a close friend of mine, is also one of the greatest natural psychics in the world. And she had originally vectored the information from this group consciousness before anybody knew what a crop circle was. I mean,
Is
it was a
this
complete
Isabel
mystery.
Kingston?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, I want
And
to talk about that.
she can't go anywhere near telephones or a computer. She blows things up. I mean, she literally is naturally gifted with this ability, and her whole family has been forever. And we were talking about this, and I said, well, the original channelings that we were getting actually came in while we were channeling about something else, which is kind of weird. And they introduced themselves as a group consciousness, and they said that we're concerned, we've been asked to help by the human race, and we're going to assist, but you have to do the work. And in 7 days of your time, we will give signs in geometric shapes at the hill beside your hill of light. To which, of course, the answer was hill of light, geometric shapes. What are they talking about? Oh, of course, that's Silbury Hill, because that's the hill. That's what it means, the hill of light, or the hill of the shining beings, to be more precise. And it has a long history. And they also said that if you look through Earth's history, we have been in physical form in times when there have been big changes and humanity has needed some guidance in order to kickstart the process to the next level. And sure enough, in my last few books, I have traced them, and they were called the Shining Ones. That was a kind of a sobriquet, a nickname, for two reasons. One, because they were much more intellectually advanced than hunter-gatherers back in 12,000 years ago. And they also were light-skinned. So they had a problem with the sunlight. So they had to keep putting a kind of a moisturizer on their skin all the time. And it gave the skin a kind of a shining glow, which is
Right.
why they were called the Shining Ones or the Shining People.
This
It was
isn't the Anunnaki, is that?
So these were the original lords of Anu, the people of Anu,
Okay, it is the
which
same.
is an Armenian goddess or god, is an androgynous being. And eventually they become the Tuatha De Danann, the Scythian culture, and then they migrate to Ireland and Scotland as the Tuatha De Danann, the royal bloodline of Ireland and Scotland. So they're still kind of around. Very tall, blonde, light-skinned, sometimes elongated skulls. So they essentially form the backbone of the Scandinavian gene. So you may be one of them for all we know.
My father's from Scandinavia. That's where I get my coloring from. And I was just thinking that was a place that we were planning on going before
Yeah,
COVID
it was
hit.
part of a universal brotherhood that was here on Earth before the Great Flood, and they're known by different names in South America, in Portugal, in Central America. But you have to know who they are. In fact, my last book was actually about all of them, this brother and sisterhood of people who ran a parallel culture alongside human hunter-gatherers. It was from them that we inherited civilization. And they keep popping in and out of history, and exactly at moments where we really are up against the fence.
Right.
Whether it's a major catastrophe or a plague or a burst coming out of the sun or comet activity, and they are there to help build the temples and actually dispose knowledge. So there is a record of them in physical form.
So the geometrical shapes that they are making, are, are these codes? Are these messages that we're supposed to unlock? Is it just the energy we're supposed to feel? Like is what is the goal in actually absorbing the crop circle? How can we fully understand it?
There's a three-prong instruction that was given to us, and one of was that first of all, they're trying to imprint the information onto the planet to, and I quote, to buy humans time to realize they're in the middle of massive changes. They're going to happen, but you can mitigate them by being prepared. Okay, so I thought, wow, that's pretty heavy stuff. But it's absolutely true. We are due for some big changes, and every indigenous culture on Earth talks about this and has warned us for millennia that this will be
The
the
Mayan
time when things are
culture.
changing. The
Yes.
trick is, and when there will be survivors, and there'll be people who will die. I mean, it happens again and again and again. There's been 13 near end of world scenarios since the Ice Age. So this is nothing new that
Right.
we're in. Okay,
It's just
so
it's
that
just
was the
our
first thing.
lifetime. That's why
Exactly. We didn't read the small print. And so that was the first thing. And they said, these are not meant for people. And you will know because when you go near them, you will be repelled by the energy. And yes, when people go near some of these, you get sick. I mean, you really start throwing up.
wait,
And that,
crop circles?
oh, yes. And if you start
Really?
getting, oh, believe me, I have been 48 hours in bed going near thing, putting my nose into the honey pot, and I go, oh, bloody hell.
So why is that?
Is to protect you from going in and having your electrical circuits completely messed up, because the frequency of the earth will well, there are frequencies which are beneficial to people, and there are some which are completely detrimental, but they're useful for the planet itself. They're just telling you this is a force field. If you feel sick, then leave. Don't go in here. It's not going to do you any good. So they're doing you a favor. They're giving you advance warning. The second one was to do with healing. And that's what led to the crop circle cards and the radionics. It took us a while to work this out, but we finally realized that each one of the symbols has an inbuilt geometric code, which we can't see, but it's there. You have to work it out using a computer. And geometry is the system's language of nature. That's how the nature uses to communicate with itself. So if you were to stick your arm under a microscope and look at your DNA, at the core of everything, everything is geometrically constructed. So the geometry holds the information that is based on a natural law. Sound is the extrapolation of that. So sound and geometry go together. And this is where it goes back to this universal consciousness. How, let's say they're on planets trillion miles away, because they're on their level of reality, just like we are on ours. It's just that we don't have a number to describe the place where they're at. We really have no concept. So, and the way they described it to me was, we have to communicate and send information to your physical world. So we sent a thought form, okay, through space and time as a concentrated piece of information. Now, when that starts hitting the layers of atmosphere of a planet, that thought form, which is invisible, traveling through space, it hits the atmosphere and it starts condensing. It starts coming down in frequency. So the first thing that we see is light phenomena, which is the tube of light. And then we hear it because when light starts to slow down, it turns into sound. And when the sound hits a physical object like a field, it creates geometry. If anybody's familiar with cymatics, that's what cymatics is, where you throw sound in sand, you photograph it, and the sound takes on this beautiful geometric shape. So that's how they're communicating. That's how the whole crop circle layering system works.
But the intent of the actual design, what do those mean?
Well, one was to do with information just for the earth, two was for healing, and three, some of the designs are encoded with information with technological information. And they're meant for people who are in, well, big brain people who are in the science world. And one of them, and I quote again, is an energy device. And they said it has to do with the illusion of gravity. And the reason why I chose the picture on the cover of my book was because I knew damn well what that image does. And I was told not to say anything about it because it would be influencing scientists to create a new energy machine. Well, it turns out that two scientists in London, one in Oklahoma of all places, and two in Australia, used that design. They built it into a 3D machine and it defies gravity. It's an anti-gravity device. And it works, and exactly as we were told in the channeling. And we're just waiting for the right politically appropriate moment in which to release this to the public, because, you know, like people who develop water-powered cars, they have a habit of being run over by their own cars, if you know what I mean.
Yes,
So you have to be very, you know, quiet about this until it's the right moment where you're allowed to release this, and then things will take their own course, because this is one of the biggest problems on the planet right now is to do with combustion engines. So
yes.
what better thing to get past the next thing, which is electrical cars, which are still not very good because you have to mine so much lithium to make the batteries. Well, that's creating a bigger problem. It's still not there. So the next stage is to do a magnetic levitation, and this is where we're going.
So when you were mentioning about technological advances, I remember seeing like a group of three crop circles and very different variations of the same circle, some with like an outside
Yeah,
element, some with an inside element, and so it looked like the, you know, before, during, and after of something.
exactly.
What is that though?
Well, if you don't get the message the first time, they'll show you the second iteration. If you don't get that, you'll get the third part. Then you go, oh, they're in this. I know which one you're talking about, Alton Barnes. I lived right around the corner from there when I was researching. And yeah, there was one particular field where the same pattern appears every 3 years, totaling 9 years. And it's 9 circles. And we're going, well, it's got to be part of the same story. And sure enough, it was. It was a development on the theme to show how sound works with the human genome. I mean, it was an incredible amount of work that went into it. So you
The
figure that there were
thought
people
process
who were
of
smarter. You know?
there's it's not just one group, I'm sure, that is providing these designs to us. It can't be. It's probably multiple cosmic intelligences, you know, and out there. Or do you think it's one group?
It began as just the Watchers and the Shining Ones. Their formal name is the Watchers.
The
What used to be the
Watchers.
messengers, the go-to between people, between the lords of Anu and humans. And don't buy into the story about all the Watchers were bastards and they destroyed the world. No, there was a core group of them that actually defied orders and they hang out with humans. And they did some very stupid things. We don't know why yet. But the other core group of people were actually there to assist and be helpful. This is where we get the word agelos from, which means messengers in Greek, but the Catholic Church turned them into angels. Completely bad translation, and it's set up all kinds of problems since then.
A lot of them are geometrical, but then it's like, okay, this is random. Here's an ant. Okay, so
There were different people. They began as just the Watchers, as the core group, and then as the years went by, and I'm talking about 15 years later, we had other groups slowly adding their piece of information in there, and then it got very confusing, and then it got very complex, and then it just went away. I mean, the real crop circles really are very rare nowadays. It's
oh, I
mostly,
didn't know that. Tell us.
oh, it's very pretty much for the last since about 2003. Most of them have been hoaxed, they've been man-made.
Okay,
And
now why is that?
here's the rub, and I'll tell you why. And I know it's kind of a bit depressing for me as well. I'd love to go back to the royal ones because they were fantastic. But they did tell us at the beginning that there would be a beginning and an end. This is a conversation. And like all conversations, it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Now, we've given you the information. Humans have to now sit down and figure it out. Bye. We're just going to fine tune things while you get this sorted out. So we were also told that from there, the crop circles would be moving to America. And sure enough, they did. They moved to Ohio, near Serpent Mound. Well, they pretty much appear every other year. Those are the real ones. In the Canadian prairie, those are the real ones, but 95% of them nowadays are all fake. But here's the rub. When I published information in my book, someone said to me, this is really good doing this because it's opened up the whole Pandora's box. You're laying the information
Right,
bare
because it
for the
was
world.
ignored or tried
You're
to be
empowering people.
poo-pooed
The
about.
problem is the hoaxers now will know how to make the crop circles look even better. And they did, because in 2004, they learned about harmonics. The one thing that they were missing, and to understand harmonics is to understand how the real circles look and why they look so good. So that they began to look much better, but the information on the ground gave it away. The stems were broken. There was no energy. And that's when we realized, there's a rise in hoaxing here, because they now know how to make them look good, but they can't alter the energy. That's what differentiates the two. So they're very nice land art, and they're annoying for the farmers who are fed up with this, because back in the early days, they knew there was something real going on, because it also affected their crops, and the crops were actually improving in health. So they were happy to have the real crop circles. They're just not so happy with people going around destroying their fields. So yeah, there was a piece of communication which is gone, and now they're just fine tuning things. Every other year they'll get one, maybe two,
Oh,
and it's
really?
usually the
Still.
simple ones, so that they don't attract any attention. So they're doing it very quietly. So, but the important thing is that the energy is now imprinted. It's all around us. And it's also transferred to the local sacred sites, because wherever you have a crop circle, they're appearing on the Earth's telluric currents, or where they cross, and those currents are going to the adjacent field where there's a mound or a temple, and people suddenly are drawn to the temples and thinking, well, why am I suddenly drawn here? The thing has been here for thousands of years. Well, the answer is that the crop circle has imprinted its information into the field. It's gone along the telluric current, and it's woken up the site. So more of us are going to the temple. So that's where the energy of the crop circles is right now, in the temples around the world. There's a resurgence of interest in visiting these sites, which is why my trips are solidly booked for years. I mean, it's incredible.
Okay, so tell us about your trips, because one of the trips that I was wanting to go on is to Egypt and do the
Yeah.
Giza pyramids and all of that. My husband and I just got back from Mexico City, which was amazing, and I felt the energy. Teotihuacan,
Mhm.
and it was insane, like the sun and the moon pyramids. I really felt the energy when I put my hand on the volcanic rock. I was vibrating
Yeah.
afterwards. I could definitely feel that.
I mean, those places are over 14,000 years old. What you see is actually the newer, the rebuilt section.
Yeah.
What's under there is much more important. No, that's the important thing, is to go to these places and pick up the information. We have a great time in Egypt. In fact, I'm almost ashamed to say that during the high point of COVID, we were the only people traveling to Egypt when we had a great time. And, you take basic precautions, obviously, but we had a great time and everybody was fine. So that's a good thing. So we do have 320 people on a waiting list, but
Oh,
when
wow.
when I announce these things, sometimes the timing isn't right for everybody, and the person who joins up as 321, they get to go. So yeah, we're about to leave in a couple of months to have more fun, and I'm planning a few more for Sardinia, Portugal. We just came back from Yucatan as well, and Peru. The idea is to engage with the sites, and I tend to leave people alone a lot of the time. So it's not like, and on your right is this, and on your left is this, and then you hear my voice all day long for 10 days. It's like, oh, how boring. I want you to have an experience. I want to just show you the ropes and then let you
Right.
finish the conversation, because I want to see a change in you at the end of the week. And I do. Even grown men go home crying. Okay.
Wow.
And they didn't even want to go. Their wives dragged them along. You can feel who they are, because there's this weight behind you for like 3 days. And they're saying, well, I haven't experienced anything and blah, 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 blah. And I thought, well, wait till tomorrow. I think there's something there for you. How do you know? I said, don't think about it. Just enjoy.
Because one temple or one pyramid or one area is going to resonate with that person, right?
Exactly. And it goes back to the crop circle. So
Right.
an organism is looking to match the other organism. If there's an exchange of information, that's where the magic occurs. So,
Right.
some people will have no experience, let's say, at Luxor, but when they go to do Edfu, they go, wow, and they are completely altered. And then you can't get them out of the building because they're just like, they got their finger deep into this socket and they just
Yeah.
don't want to unplug. And I understand that, because then it becomes a bit of a drug. And then you realize that you began to wake up parts of yourself that you didn't even know existed. And that's where the magic occurs. And that's why I do what I do, and I love it.
So I'm really disappointed to hear the crop circles aren't really happening too much these days. That was something that I
Yeah,
didn't
they've
even
been
know.
commercialized. There's a lot of politics around them, and a lot of, let's say, BS around them, unfortunately. The human race has a wonderful ability to start off asking great questions, and we cooperate, and then we take sides, and then we try to own the information, and then we
Yeah,
try to sell it and make
I
up
just
things as we go
threw it
along.
up.
It's human nature, but we knew it was coming. But the good news is that the energy is in the earth, it's in the water, and it's also activating the old temples. So the trick is go to the old temples.
Right.
That's the most important thing, and you'll pick it up there.
And
So they
that's been
haven't
my
really gone.
desire. I've
They're
been
just not
having this
there, if you know what I mean.
intense desire to do that. That's why we went to Mexico City.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to go to Egypt. And I just feel this intense desire to go to these sacred sites. And I actually would really like to go to Stonehenge. I've never been, and I've heard that that's extremely powerful.
You need to get the private tour though inside the stones, because you're not allowed inside anymore. There's only like a couple of hours in the middle of the night and before dawn. You pay a ridiculous amount of money. They allow 26 people. It's highly commercialized and it's illegal. They are actually breaking the law, because Stonehenge is owned by the public of Britain, not by English heritage. So as soon as the present government is taken out, they will be sued, and the monument will revert back to the nation, because it belongs to the nation, not
Right.
to a private company that tries to make a ton of money out
Oh
of it.
my gosh,
So,
I didn't know that
oh, it's highly
either.
political, but this is the age that we're in. Money, politics, and maximizing and monetizing everything. Capitalism at its worst. But it
Well,
is,
you were
if you
on
can.
speed dial with the Watchers. You were in like this with Isabel. You were able to channel with her and to speak with them. And so, are you still in contact? Are you able to still connect?
Every minute.
Seriously.
I've begun to realize that there's a relationship. I didn't expect it. I didn't want it. I didn't ask for it, but somehow,
I got
it's
the
actually in all my
chills.
books, all the books that I've written, it's in there. I didn't realize it until I started being reminded. It's like, actually, you're right. I am. Every single book that I've written has a connection to the Watchers, and I feel them very intimately
I actually
all
feel them
around.
here with us. Like I have like
Oh, it's
the hair on my
yeah.
arm.
Even in New Zealand, there was a site there that I went to on my first trip. It must have been 12 years ago now, and I was very tired. I was on tour for 4 weeks. I was really exhausted. I was in the back of a minibus, and people were taking me somewhere special. I had no idea where I was going, and we went through this forest. And I suddenly woke up with a jolt. I went, "Wow, I haven't felt that energy since I was in England and in a crop circle." And they're all pointing at something, and I was pointing somewhere else. I'm going, "Oh, look at them!" And the whole bus turned to me and said, "What are you looking at?" Well, they're the really tall beings. They're the Watchers. What are they doing here? And it's like I caught two of them, because the more you do this, the more you actually see them. I thought people were crazy when they told me about this, but now I can actually see them too.
I
Because,
actually
and
feel
by the
their
way, anybody
presence
can
right
do this.
now.
Anybody has this ability. You just have to believe, and you have to keep working at it, like driving a car. So I'm watching these two people like they've been caught smoking behind the bicycle shed, and they're looking at me like, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "What are you doing here?" And they said, "Well, we're protectors of this mound, like the mound over in Britain that you're also protecting." Yeah, because I saw you in the mound in England. Wow, so you got two jobs? Oh yeah, I've got lots of jobs. And the whole bus is staring at me, and I went, perhaps I should have kept my mouth shut. And they go, "What are you looking at?" I said, "Well, give me a piece of paper, I'll draw it." And I drew it exactly what I saw. I said, "I know who these people are. They're behind crop circles, they're behind temple building. They go back a long, long time." And they went, "That's amazing." And I said, "Well, I don't want to freak you out like I'm crazy." I said, "Well, no, no, no. There's another guy that was here from England 4 weeks ago, and he said exactly the same thing. He saw the same beings. He made exactly the same drawing." I said, "Who was it?" "Well, Hamish Miller." I said, "Well, he was a dowser. He was a friend of mine who taught me how to dowse." I thought, what a small world.
Okay,
So,
for the
but
audience who doesn't know what dowsing is, explain what dowsing is.
well, dowsing is essentially using your nervous system. You ask a question of the field around you, and you say, "I'm looking for something very specific," and your energy field, your aura goes out, and it connects with the local energy field, and it reacts, and it goes through your guts. So your gut feeling tells you the answer. So if you can't interpret that in a psychic manner, you take two bent coat hangers and you develop a language. So when the rods do this, it's yes or no, depending on your own system,
Can
of
you
course,
also
but it
use a
changes.
pendulum to do the
I
dowsing?
use a pendulum, but it's quicker with the rods. But after you do this for
I like
3
the yes
years,
and the no
you throw the
pendulum the
stuff
best.
away because you've already picked up the answer before the response in the equipment. And after it, you can see it. So you go from dowsing rods and pendulums to actually picking up the information and hearing it. And the more you do it, then you actually see it. So I now see energy lines everywhere. Whenever I'm tuned in, I know what the direction and the color. I know if they're masculine or feminine, and it's just because I've developed the that God-given electrical circuit that we all have. So it's not a special ability. We all have this ability.
You have
Yeah,
to tune into it.
yeah. And yes, you can use it to win the lottery, and I have a lot of funny stories about it.
You have?
Several times, and every single time something happens 5 minutes before you buy the ticket, where you are prevented from buying the ticket, and the number comes up. So far, I believe that the tally is we've lost $187 million
Because you're
by
using it for
missing
the
out the
wrong
lottery,
reason.
because it's not part of what I'm supposed to be doing. You see,
Right.
it doesn't ally with how I make my living. Now, I could do, if I pushed it, I could do it, but and I usually get like $10. They're trying to make the point that that's not why I'm here. Okay. Some people are meant to win it and some people are not. You're supposed to get your money some other way. And some people are destined to be poor because that's the lesson they're trying to learn. It's whatever is relative to who you are as a soul. And you just have to accept it. So, but it's also their way of demonstrating that they have a vicious sense of humor. And yes, they do have a vicious sense of humor. They're almost like British, I think, the watchers. You know,
Really?
only the Brits have
I
that kind of
just,
sarcasm.
I'm telling you, when I felt the chills and I felt their presence, I just felt this envelope of love come over me. Like it was,
Yeah, me too. And
did you?
I am actually sitting on the an energy line that actually runs diagonally through my building. It's the only place where I can put my desk and put my computer. Of course, I am feeding off the grid, and I'm feeding the grid with my work. That's how it works. So, and I think 99% of people that I've done commissions for in terms of energy healing or clearing out the house or the land, I find that when they're doing this kind of work, especially with healers, they've either been attracted to the place where the energy is already present, or they attract the energy to the location. So we are actually part of the grid. We are feeding the grid, and the grid is feeding us. So it's part of this relationship. And it goes back to, again, the
Mother
placement of
Earth.
temples and the placement of crop circles on the land. It's a very deliberate location. So Stonehenge is not 50 feet over there. It's exactly here because that's where everything converges, and it's
Yes.
anchoring the thing to the spot. So I'm on one of these lines right now. So if I sit over there, my mind goes to mush. But here it's like, oh, I'm completely in the flow. Well, yes,
Yeah.
you are.
Well, I feel everything is connected, and for me it's like a domino effect where one thing just seems to lead to the next, to the next, to the next.
Yeah.
And for me I'm putting all the puzzle pieces together, and I'm featuring different healing modalities. That's why I really needed to, have you on, because this is so unique.
Well, thank you.
And I will keep this kind of away from the computer. I'll make sure that the audience will be able to
Yeah.
take advantage. We are living currently in a sick care system and not a healthcare system. I am looking for all different, healing modalities and, ways to enhance our health span and lifespan, that are available right now.
Yeah.
And so I thought that this would be something, definitely the audience would gravitate to. I'm featuring brain tap, I'm featuring the harmonic egg, I'm featuring a lot of things that are, it all coincides with what you're doing. It's just a different piece of the puzzle is what I was saying.
Yeah, we have so many tools at our disposal. And you know what? None of them, it's nothing really new under the sun when it comes to this. This is just not a form of radionics or resonance therapy. This has been going on in Egypt since 8000 BC. And there's actually a quote by the god of wisdom talking about it. There's even homeopathy is discussed in Egypt in 8000 BC as well. It's been here forever. We just need to forget about these things, and they're all around. But It just depends which, form you tend to use for your toolbox. But
Well,
it
I
really,
want to do all of the above, and I'm into it all. So for me, it's like I plan to live past 100, and I'm, doing everything that I can to make that
exactly.
happen.
I mean, you can go into the Great Pyramid and go and tone in the King's Chamber, and it doesn't take much effort, and you can get the same effect as well. And there's one chapel in the on the side of Wells Cathedral in England, which hardly anybody ever goes to. It's one of the most beautiful, perfect acoustical environments. And I tell you, you go in there for 10 minutes, you come out 3 hours later just by humming in there. That's all you need to
Wow.
do. And it starts to completely alter your brainwave patterns. And in fact, the Russians scientists were way ahead of this. They found out back in the 70s that they didn't think this mumbo jumbo added to anything, that people went to Gothic cathedrals and they prayed and they got healed. Well, that's the folklore, because the Gothic cathedrals are built on the old temples. So the energy is already there. But it was the geometry that's hidden in the buildings that's important. So they found that by putting people, standing them in the middle of the nave, like a big antenna, and then chanting Gregorian music, which is a kind of pop music that was done for that era, they monitored their brainwave patterns, and they found that as soon as the Gothic chants started going through the brain and otherwise into the building, and the building responded, your brainwaves went 4,000% above normal waking state. So
Wow.
literally, you've expanded your consciousness by having this particular sound in this geometric environment called a Gothic cathedral. So yeah, again, another variation on the theme. It's all around us. We just have to be more aware of it.
Right, right. And we have to, yeah, we need to, the ancient wisdom has to come back to a modern, for modern life to be
Yeah,
able to
it
bring it
will.
full circle.
We
Right.
just like to take, as humans, I think we enjoy the idea of taking it close to the cliff as possible. And we're pretty close to the
We're
cliff right
so
now.
close to that
Yeah.
cliff right
And,
now.
and then
It's
we
like,
wake up because we're in trouble. Well, just making it worse for yourselves. And in fact, the Maya make a very good point about this. There was a huge commercial aspect of 2012, which is absolute nonsense. And any Maya laughed and rolls their eyeballs when you talk about 2012. They said, yeah, it was just a midpoint in the calendar. There's a 30-year window in this midpoint. So it really began 30 years before 2012, the whole change, because it's very gradual. You hardly ever notice it. But the problem is, after in the next 30 years after 2012, the window starts closing. So
yes.
it becomes, if we don't hit a critical mass, and we're pretty close to hitting a critical mass, by the way, we're much closer than we believe. Things are going to start getting more black and white, and you see this the repercussions in the political spectrum right now. Everything's very black and white. People are on a very short fuse. Well, it's
Yeah.
because the window is closing, and you feel the critical mass, and the ones that are holding on to the old paradigm, they're trying to make sure it doesn't change. And we on the other side are saying, no, we need to change. So you've got that buffer going, and things will get a bit more rocky, and the climate is going to help as well. It's going to bring in more catastrophe, and it's going to slowly wake up more and more people as you go along. But it's always been that way. We stopped building sacred sites a long time ago, and now we have to depend on ourselves to create the change. So it's going to be interesting.
Yes.
Interesting ride.
Very interesting ride. Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thanks for
Really,
having me.
really enjoyed it. And thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you next time on the New 100 Longevity Campaign. Bye. I'm not backing down, 'cause the future is now. Not backing down, 'cause the future is now.